Expansion of liability for foodborne illness from negligence to breach of warranty. Hello, my name is Angie. I am a student at Johnson and Wales University studying towards a bachelor's in culinary arts and food service management. Today I will be presenting a documentary on the expansion of liability for foodborne illnesses from negligence to the breach of warranty. There are several laws dating back to the 16th and 17th centuries surrounding the dangers of foodborne illnesses that I will be going over here, as well as laws and rules leading up to the current day. It would be difficult to jump right into the laws before expanding what foodborne illness is, what causes it, and how to prevent it. So here we go. Foodborne illness, also referred to as foodborne disease, foodborne infection, or foodborne poisoning. It's an illness caused by ingestion of food contaminated with disease causing microbes, pathogens, poisonous chemicals, and other harmful substances. Most foodborne illnesses are infections caused by a variety of bacteria, viruses, and parasites. Other diseases are poisoning caused by harmful toxins or chemicals. Many foodborne pathogens also can be acquired through drinking water, contact with animals or their environment, or through person-to-person contact. Common recognized infections, as you can see, I'm not going to attempt to pronounce them all, but I want to pay particular attention to E. coli, norovirus, salmonella. E. coli are germs called bacteria that can be found in many places, including the environment, foods, water, and the intestines of people and animals. Most are harmless and part of a healthy intestinal tract, but some can make you sick with diarrhea, urinary tract infections, pneumonia, sepsis, and others. People who are at an increased risk for E. coli include children under 5 years old, adults 65 and older, and people with weakened immune systems, international travelers. Infection can lead to serious health conditions called hemoglobic uremic syndrome, or HUS 0157 H7. Can lead to kidney failure, permanent health problems, and even death. Norovirus, also known as Norwalk virus and sometimes referred to as the winter vomiting disease, most common cause of gastroenteritis. Salmonella is a bacterium that occurs mainly in the intestine, especially a stereotype causing food poisoning. Symptoms of foodborne illness are diarrhea and or vomiting, typically lasts 1 to 7 days, and other symptoms may include abdominal cramp, nausea, fever, joint and back aches, and fatigue. Foods associated with foodborne illnesses are raw foods of animal origin, raw meat, poultry, raw eggs, unpasteurized milk, or raw shellfish. Fruits and vegetables, raw sprouts, ideal for growing microbes, unpasteurized fruit juices or cider, any food item that is touched by a person who is ill with vomiting or diarrhea, and food items not sequentially cooked, such as salads and cut fruit. Causes of foodborne illness in E. coli is beef, especially undercooked or raw hamburgers, produce, raw milk, unpasteurized juices. Norovirus, any food contaminated by somebody who was infected with this virus. And Salmonella, most common cause of foodborne death, responsible for 1.4 million cases of foodborne illness a year, mainly from raw undercooked eggs, undercooked poultry and meat, fresh fruits and vegetables, and unpasteurized dairy products. So how do we prevent that? When it comes to safe food handling, everything that comes in contact with food must be kept clean. Following 4 easy steps will help anyone from becoming ill due to a foodborne illness. 1. Make sure you wash your hands and clean all surfaces often. Separate your foods. Separate raw foods from uncooked foods to prevent cross contamination. Make sure you cook your food under the proper temperatures and refrigerate it properly when not being used or eaten. Because bacteria are everywhere. Cleanliness is everything, keeping everything clean. By keeping everything clean, consumers can be assured that they are doing their part to be good, safe food. Now on to the laws. Foodborne illness outbreaks have led to an upsurge in foodborne illness lawsuits through the United States. The CDC estimates in June of 2020 that foodborne diseases cause approximately 76 million illnesses, 325,000 hospitalizations, and 5,000 deaths each year. These statistics have created a renewed trend in plaintiff litigation to attempt to recover damages. Elements of foodborne illness claim are breach of warranty or implied warranty, negligence, and strict products liability. In the United States, a person who becomes ill with a foodborne illness can bring a civil cause action against another by claiming that individual is legally liable for the harm caused by the illness. Liability is the state of being responsible for something, especially by law. Strict liability in food, although there is significant variations in the details from state to state, there are 3 strict liability theories that impact foodborne illness or injury. 1. Manufacturing defects. 2. Design defects. 3. Failure to provide an adequate warning or instructions. Strict products liability relieves the plaintiff of having to prove that the distributor, supplier, or manufacturer was to blame. They only need to prove that the food consumed was contaminated and that it led to an illness. Negligence. A business has a duty to exercise reasonable care, maintain a safe environment, and produce safe products, also eliminating unreasonable dangers. Even if causation is established, a plaintiff must prove actual harm or injury. Just being sick will justify this requirement, but the degree and duration will determine the damages, if any. Breach of warranty is food suppliers and distributors must meet minimum standards for making, storing, and preparing their products. This is called an implied warranty. Selling or serving contaminated food to the public would be a breach of warranty. It is implied that a product will conform to the buyer's expectations and follow minimum quality specifications. Burden of proof in a foodborne illness case. To be successful, the plaintiff must establish a connection between the ingestion of contaminated food and the illness. Now I'm going to go through a little small timeline, which will show you how these laws pertaining to the foodborne illnesses came to be. People who have been getting sick from eating contaminated foods from as far back as 323 BC. Doctors from the University of Maryland think that the first suggested case of a known foodborne illness was Alexander the Great, who died in 323 BC from typhoid fever when his army stopped to rest in ancient Babylon. Typhoid fever is caused by the bacteria Salmonella. Historians believe that the English settlement in Jamestown, Virginia, was disseminated by typhoid fever many times between 1607 and 1699. In the late 1600s, a toxic fungus that was growing on rye in the fields and then used in the food changed history and led to the Salem witch trials. In 1898, typhoid fever sickened over 20,000 American soldiers during the Spanish and American War. In 1202, it was believed uh, it is believed that the first English food law, called the Assisi of Bread, was proclaimed by King John of England, which prohibited the alteration of bread ingredients such as ground peas and beans. This was replicated in 1646 and later passed the Massachusetts Act against selling unwholesome provisions in 1785. This is believed to be the first U.S. food safety law. In 1862, President Abraham Lincoln formed the U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA, and appointed Charles M. Witherill to lead the Division of Chemistry, which in 1906 became the Food and Drug Administration. Also in 1906, the Pure Food and Drug Act and the Federal Meat Inspection Act were passed and revised in 1938 by Congress and becoming the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. These acts prohibit the sale of adulterated or misbranded meat and meat byproducts for food to ensure that meat and meat byproducts were slaughtered and processed under sanitary conditions. Provisions were added to ensure safe tolerances be set for unavoidable poisonous substances, authorizing standards of, identifying quality and fill of container for foods, authorizing factory inspections, adding the remedy of court injunctions to previous penalties of seizures and prosecutions. In 1949, the FDA published its first guidance to the industry called Procedures for Appraisal of the Toxicity of Chemicals in Food. This gave a way to influence the industry's actions without mandating specific requirements. In 1957, Poultry Products Inspection Act was passed, mandating the inspection of poultry products sold in the interstate commerce. 1958, the 1938 Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act was amended to include a food additive amendment due to concerns of impact of unknown chemicals in, in the food. This ensured the safety of ingredients used in processed foods. In 1962, President John F. Kennedy stated that consumers have a right to safety, to be informed, and to choose and be heard, which the Consumer Bill of Rights was passed. To prevent unfair or deceptive packaging and labeling of household products, including food, the Fair Packaging and Labeling Act was passed in 1967. It requires the identification of the commodity, the name and location of the manufacturer, the packer, or distributor, and the net quantity in terms of weight, measure, or numerical count be stated on the label. In 1970 was the beginning of the modern data collecting on foodborne illness outbreaks by the Center of Disease Control. In 1973, 75 million cans of mushrooms were removed from the store shelves after being linked to a nationwide illness outbreak of botulism, and low-acid food processing regulations were set to ensure the proper heat treating of canned foods by the National Botulism Surveillance System. In 1977, the Food Safety and Quality Service was created to perform meat and poultry grading and inspection. In 1981, it was renamed to the Food Safety and Inspection Service. In 1993, 4 children died after eating contaminated hamburgers at a Jack in the Box. The Jack in the Box case was a watershed moment that established standard regulatory practices for food safety and led to a zero tolerance policy for E. coli in ground beef. It propelled the passage of legislation in 1996 called the Hazard Analysis and Critical Control Point System rule, which required meat packing facilities to have a plan in place for keeping pathogens out of our food. The Peanut Corporation resulted in a 28-year prison sentence for the CEO, the hardest punishment ever imposed in connection with a foodborne illness, highlighting the importance of establishing regulatory consequences for those who fail to follow safety laws. Both of these cases paved the road to what is considered the most significant food safety legislation in 70 years, the Food Safety Modernization Act. The Food Safety Modernization Act was signed into law in 2011 by President Barack Obama. The difference between this act and those of the past is it switches the focus from responding to contamination to prevention. It also gives the FDA authority to regulate the way foods are grown, harvested, and processed. FDA will mandate requiring comprehensive science-based protective controls across the food supply, including mandatory produce safety standards, mandatory preventative controls for food facilities, authority to prevent intentional contamination. In conclusion, although we have come a long way in the prevention of foodborne illness by adopting laws to help regulate those who chose to ignore them, the CDC estimates that 48 million Americans continue to become ill from foodborne contaminants. As these illnesses and the causes continue to evolve, it is everyone's responsibility to do everything they can to prevent the spread of these dangerous microorganisms. Thank you for joining me on my journey.